Hello, everyone. Welcome to another solo coffee chat. Actually, our very first, technically second solo coffee chat. This one is going to be about coaching and how coaching has changed my life. And before I get into this, I want to say that these solo coffee chats, or really these bonus Friday coffee chats that you'll see a couple times a month, are not always going to be this like heavy on mindset and things like that. But this is one that, number one, I kind of want to get out of the way because I'm a little nervous to do this. I feel like, normally I'm not talking about personal things like this, but I think that it'll be really helpful. And number two, I get a lot of questions about coaching. I'm always kind of alluding to the fact that I get coached frequently and how it's changed my life. And a lot of people want to know more about that. So that's what I want to discuss in today's episode. But just know that future coffee chats aren't necessarily going to be this heavy on like mindset. We're going to do all sorts of different fun topics. So coaching is truly what has given me the confidence and tools to change my life. And I know that sounds dramatic, but I feel like I have my dream career. I feel like I'm finally in a good place with my relationships in my life, especially with relationships with my family. And all of these tools I've learned over the last 4 years. And I can confidently say I'm a different person than I was 4 years ago because of some of these things that I implemented. So before I get into this, I want to say that do not take mental health advice from me. I am not formally trained in any sort of mental health therapy, coaching, whatever it may be. So this is just my own experience. Take it or leave it. And then number two, there's a difference between coaching and therapy. From what I understand, coaching is more kind of future-based, action-based, and therapy is more helping you heal through wounds, traumas, things in your past. So there's a time and place, I think, for both. And I've gotten both, and I think both are incredible and have their place. But coaching is something that I do on a regular basis at this point in my life. Not to say that I won't do therapy at another point in my life, but that's kind of where I'm at right now is with coaching. So how did I get started coaching? I've been getting coached for about 4 years, and I get coached on the Life Coach School membership. So it's called Self-Coaching Scholars. It's led by Brooke Castillo. You actually can't join it. They're shutting down this year, which I'm like, what? What am I going to do with my coaching now that this is over? But I've been getting coached twice a week. They're 20-minute sessions, and they have a bunch of coaches that work for their business. So every time I get coached, it's someone different. And in that 20 minutes, I come with an issue or something on my mind, and we just kind of work through it. And some of those 20-minute sessions are more beneficial or powerful than others. And I think that's really common. But I think the consistency of getting coached twice a week and having someone else look at my brain and help me sort through my brain has been a total game changer. So the reason I started doing this about 4 years ago was because I hit a little bit of a crisis in my life. I've always been an achiever, kind of looking for the next thing. So, I went to college, I went to PT school, and then after PT school, I got what I thought at the time was my kind of dream job. I was working in this cash pay clinic. It was so awesome. I had a lot of flexibility. I was learning a ton. I could kind of have an entrepreneurial edge and like get my own clients and kind of be responsible for my own income in a way. And that was really fun and exciting for me. And I was also about to get married. And so I had all of these things that I thought were kind of the end. I was like, this is where I want to be. I have the dream job. I've got the dream husband. Why am I still not happy? And I was starting to have kind of like panic attacks at work, super inappropriate, was breaking down crying in front of patients. Like it was bad. And I was seeking help. I was getting therapy at the time. And then I also came across the Life Coach School, Brooke Castillo's work. And her work is very much based in stoicism in some ways. So in the idea that we have control over our own brains and our own actions, and we can't necessarily control the world around us. And so the best thing that you can do is invest in your own brain, your own thoughts, manage your own mind so that you can control what you can control. And I know that sounds obvious and maybe advice that you've heard a million times, but I was really living the antithesis of that. I was living in the opposite way. I was always seeking validation from my husband or my employer or getting invited from my friends to do things socially. I was always looking for compliments. Am I doing the right thing? Am I funny? Am I smart? Part of me, seeking validation that I was smart enough was going to physical therapy school. Can I get in? Can I graduate? That will validate me that I'm smart enough and that I'm good enough. And I was very much dependent on other people giving me that external validation to make me feel good and make me feel enough. But on the other side of that, other people's actions were also responsible for making me feel bad. Anytime anyone would do something that, pissed me off, it would derail me. It would cause a lot of anger. I had a lot of conflict and drama in my life because I was really not taking responsibility for my own brain. And I was too reliant on other people's words, actions, and how they influenced me. And this was causing a lot of internal turmoil in me to the point where, again, I was having panic attacks and anxiety attacks at work and crying and just really not in a good place. And so what I learned through the life coach school and through her work alongside therapy, of course, too, is that you are responsible for your own thoughts. And she came up with something called the model. And, I don't think that she came up with this. I think this is just how she organized it. So the model is this. You have a circumstance that happens in your life that's outside of your control. You have thoughts about that circumstance. Those thoughts are in your control. Those thoughts create a feeling in your body, and that feeling drives action, and those actions accumulate to create your results. So you can't always control the circumstance, but you can control your thoughts about the circumstance. And when you can control your thoughts about the circumstance, you can control your feelings. When you control how you feel to a certain extent, you control how you behave. And then that's how the results in your life start to accumulate. So I started implementing this. And again, I know it sounds so basic, manage your thoughts. Don't let your brain go haywire on you. But I didn't have the tools before I was getting coached to know how to put this into practice and to actually rewire my brain. So one of the things that I really started to work on was believing that I was enough. And this is full circle, because if you take my classes, you hear me say, you've done enough, you are enough. And this is because I really had to rewire my own brain. I went back to I've kept an online journal for 4 years. And I went back today to 4 years ago today. And I was like, what did I write in my journal? And I'll talk about this in a second about my process with this. But I just brain dumped kind of everything that's in my mind. And some of my thoughts on that page were, I don't have a good enough personality. I'm not going to succeed because I'm not funny enough. I'm not smart enough. I literally wrote this. I wrote, no one will ever want to interview me on my podcast or on their podcast because I'm not smart enough. I'm not articulate enough, which is hilarious because now flash forward 4 years, I've literally been on all these podcasts and have podcasts booked for the future. And so it's just so funny. But I had all of these thoughts about myself with the underlying tone that I wasn't enough. And because I didn't feel like I was enough, I was searching for validation outside of myself, compliments, words of affirmation, achievements, things that would finally prove that I was enough. And I had to dismantle this kind of thought by thought, inch by inch. And how I did that was through getting coached regularly and coming with a specific issue. And the coach would help me kind of sort through my thoughts and figure out, okay, what is the thought that is making you feel this way and making you behave in this way? So let's take the example of I don't have a good enough personality to be successful. That is literally a thought that I had in my brain and a belief that I had about myself. And so one thing that I was really working on was, okay, I do have the personality to be successful because I have these achievements under my belt already. I have some proof that I can be successful in some sort of way. So maybe that means I do have a good enough personality to be successful. So it was just kind of changing my thoughts and spending less time on the I'm not enough and more time on the what could be. So with enough practice, I feel like I kind of had this brain switch and I've rewired my brain from being honestly really self-conscious to being a lot more confident. Now, of course, it's not perfect. I think confidence is a spectrum, and I think it's something that you can continue to improve on throughout your whole life. But I am leaps and bounds more confident than I was 4 years ago, when I was really trying to change people's opinions of me or seeking their validation. I was also another way my brain kind of was going haywire at this time was, if I had a conversation with someone, I would go home and replay that conversation in my mind like over and over and think about like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. That was so stupid. They probably think I'm this or that or whatever. And I was so focused on how other people were perceiving me because, again, I was seeking their validation to know and feel like I was enough. So that was a lot of wasted brain space. And my brain just does not operate like that anymore. Of course, I have thoughts that, I'm not doing enough, especially with parenting. That has really shaken things up in my brain. But it's so much better. It is so much better. And it's gotten me to a place where I feel like I can say I have true confidence because although I still care about people in my life and how they feel about me and how I'm affecting them, I know that to a certain extent, other people's opinions of me are something I can't really fully control. And they might have opinions of me that I'll never know. And that's okay. And all I can do is be the best version of myself. I can show up in a way that I can feel confident about, and they can think whatever they decide to think. And it's really none of my business. So that's kind of been the shift in my brain. And I think that this has allowed me more brain space to think about ideas, to think about, things that I'm going to do in my relationships or in my business. It's made me a better listener. It's made me be able to be less critical of others because I'm less critical of myself. So this, for example, I was always very critical of my parents, and they called me the food police. Like I would always be kind of like judging what they were eating and be kind of like picking them apart for what they were eating. And it wasn't very fun to be around. I wasn't very fun to be around at a dinner table with them. And in doing this work, I've kind of shifted the way I view my parents. I'm like, they are full grown adults. They can do whatever they want to do. They can behave however they want to behave. And I'm just going to love them with as much as I can. And a lot of that came from me deep down being like, I am enough. I don't need other people to tell me I'm enough. I don't need my parents behaving in this certain way to know that I'm enough. So really, I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but I just wanted to give you all lots of examples about this shift that I've had. And in this shift, it's been gradual. That's why I had to look back at my journal to kind of see like, where was my brain 4 years ago? And I was really shocked at how far I've come, which is really, really cool, but it's about the consistency. So some of the tools that have helped me kind of get to this place are, of course, getting coached and having another person help me and someone outside of me that's neutral, that can kind of assess where my brain's at. So that's number one. But then I've learned these other tools that I've kind of implemented on my own. So one of the tools that I do to this day and that I was doing in 2020 is the brain download. So I just open a blank document on Google Docs, and I just type everything in my brain. I don't censor it. I don't stop typing. I type. And whatever is coming out, it comes out. So at first it's kind of like the surface level things. Like it's like, oh, I got to get that done. Or, I need to make sure I don't forget that or whatever. And then it starts to get like a little deeper. And then like one will sneak out that's like, I wonder what so-and-so thinks of me, or like, I wonder, like, oh, I'm not funny enough, or whatever. They'll like kind of sneak out and you'll be like, oh, what was that? And it's these subconscious thoughts that are kind of floating in the background that you're not really aware of because you're not really bringing it to the forefront of your mind. They're just kind of floating and bouncing around in your brain, but they're there affecting how you feel about yourself. So I brain dump everything so that I can really see what's in my brain. And then from there, I'll take a thought or two and I'll work on those thoughts. And I'll say, okay, is that thought true? Is that a thought I want to continue to think? Is that a thought I can change? And most of the time, it's a thought that I do want to change because most of the time, they're thoughts that are not serving me, that are not actually producing the feelings, the actions, the results that I want. So when I get a thought like this, another tool that I have is I have a thought that's not serving me. Let's say like one of my thoughts, again, I'm just taking these thoughts from 2020. One of my thoughts was like, I'm not funny. And maybe my goal thought, let's use a different one. I don't have the personality to be successful. That was one of my thoughts. And my goal thought is I have the personality to be successful. That's what I would love to think about myself. And if I thought that thought about myself, I would feel confident. I would take actions that reflect confidence. And I would slowly start to see the results that make me successful. So it's really difficult, what I've learned, to jump from I don't have the personality to be successful to I do have the personality to be successful, because I didn't really believe it, right? So I had the repetitive thought, I don't have the personality to be successful over and over. It's really hard to just change and jump right to, I do have the personality. So one of the tools I learned was called a ladder thought. So you take a thought that's slightly less negative and try to think that. So instead of, I don't have the personality to be successful, it's maybe parts of my personality are there that I could be successful. And then from there, maybe we do another ladder. Maybe it's a lot of my personality is such that I could be successful. And you slowly start to inch your way towards that more positive thought by using kind of these ladder thoughts, these less negative thoughts that make you feel slightly better. And it takes time. It might take, days, weeks of you practicing those thoughts over and over before you can finally jump to that goal thought. So that's another tool that I use a lot. And really, since I've been doing it so much, it's more or less second nature at this point, where I identify a negative thought. I'm like, oh, whoa, that is not something I want to continue with. And I'll do kind of this ladder process in my brain real quick and move on. And then another thing that I do, this is the last tool that I'll talk about, is I go all the way to the end of something bad that could happen. So if you're a worrier, like I am, again, worrying has gotten so much better for me. But if you're a worrier like I am, a lot of times you're worried that something's going to happen and you're like, oh my gosh, this means the world's going to end. But a lot of times it doesn't mean the world's going to end. It just means that if the worst case were to happen, yeah, it wouldn't be ideal, but a lot of times you'll be able to move on. Okay, so an example is I'm worried about how I've got a big podcast interview coming up. I'm worried about how that's going to go. And in my brain, I'm just like, I'm worried about how it's going to go. I'm worried about how it's going to go. But instead, let's take it all the way to the end. What is the worst thing that could possibly happen? Okay, the worst thing that could possibly happen is I mess up on the podcast and I say something stupid and I embarrass myself. Okay, that is the worst possible thing that could happen. If I embarrass myself, I can deal with that. I'm not going to die. No one is getting kidnapped. Like, it's not that big of a deal. So I think taking things to the worst case scenario, instead of just like letting it kind of half spin in your brain, is something that's been really, really helpful for me. So that is coaching. That is why I get coached, kind of how it's helped me. Of course, I will continue to get coached throughout my entire life. I think that there's always things I can be working on. I'm currently working on people pleasing. I'm working on guilt, especially parenting guilt. And so there's always things that come up, especially as you go through different chapters of your life. There's always new things that are going to come up and challenge you in different ways. So I hope this was helpful. Again, this is not advice by any means. I just wanted to kind of share my own human brain with the hopes that maybe it makes you feel a little more validated as well. All right, everyone, we will see you next Thursday for a regular episode. Bye.